Have you ever wondered what it takes to make an enemy trust you with their life? The general's voice carried a mix of reverence and disbelief, his gaze fixed on the camera lens, as if daring the audience to comprehend the gravity of his words. In the vast halls of Krevthar Prime Broadcasting, the audience sat captivated, their scales glimmering under the studio lights. Few had heard such an account before, and none could have predicted its profound implications. The tale he began to weave was unlike any other, filled with peril, sacrifice, and a question that haunted civilizations across galaxies. Could humanity, a race still wrestling with its own flaws, extend its hand across the stars? "What would you do?" he asked, his multi-tonal voice deepening, "if your only hope of survival rested in the hands of those you were taught to distrust? Would you risk everything for a chance at life, or would pride seal your fate?" The answer, he admitted, was both simpler and more complex than it seemed. Trust, fragile yet vital, became his only lifeline, and as his blood spilled in an uncharted sector of space, that lifeline had one name: humanity. The general leaned forward, his antennae vibrating softly as he continued. "I was a commander on a covert mission for Zereth Quor, the capital of my world, Ventral. I had never encountered humans before that day, only heard tales of their erratic nature. But when the Karax Dominion, our sworn rivals, ambushed my fleet, I had no choice but to flee to the nearest habitable world, Earth." His mandibles clicked slightly, a gesture of lingering unease. "My vessel was damaged. I was bleeding. If I didn't act quickly, I knew I would die. I had one decision to make: trust humanity or embrace the void. As my vessel entered Earth's atmosphere, the onboard systems were in chaos," the general recounted, his mandibles tightening with the memory. "Smoke filled the cabin, and the alarm tones became indistinguishable, a cacophony of my own impending death." The audience of Ventral sat in silence, their shimmering eyes fixed on him, as if reliving his descent themselves. The broadcast zoomed in slightly on his scarred exoskeleton, evidence of the injuries that had pushed him to the brink. "Earth," he continued, "was not a planned destination. It was desperation. The Karax Dominion had nearly torn my ship apart. Direct return to Zereth Quor was suicide, and venturing deeper into uncharted space was even worse. I had studied human communications as part of my mission. Their world seemed fractured, yet advanced, their nature unpredictable, but resourceful." The general paused, his antennae vibrating as if feeling the weight of that decision anew. "I took the risk and guided my damaged craft toward a densely populated area, hoping their technology could keep me alive long enough to send a distress signal back to Ventral." The screen behind him displayed a vivid simulation of his arrival. A fiery streak burned across Earth's skies, terrifying local populations. Emergency responders, unaware of what they were dealing with, surrounded the crash site as the general emerged from his vessel. His towering form, marred with injuries and leaking a viscous teal fluid, sent waves of panic through the human crowd. "I was met with fear," he admitted, understandable. To them, I was an unknown threat, a towering alien bleeding onto their soil. But then, something unexpected happened. His voice softened, almost as if speaking directly to his audience's hearts. "Instead of hostility, I was met with compassion. Humanity extended its hand, not a weapon. Their doctors and scientists overcame their fear and focused on saving my life, even when they had every reason to turn away." He looked directly into the camera, his voice firm yet filled with gratitude. "It was that moment when I realized I was wrong about them. Humanity was more than I had been led to believe." At this point in the story, it's hard not to wonder, what would you have done if faced with a moment like this? Humanity's actions would change the course of interstellar history, and the journey is just getting started. If you're as fascinated as we are by these extraordinary events, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you'll stay connected to more stories of courage, collaboration, and the extraordinary bonds that transcend the stars. The humans moved quickly, the general explained, his tone a mix of admiration and surprise. Their medical teams, though primitive by Venthrall standards, displayed a level of ingenuity I had rarely witnessed, even among our brightest. They had no understanding of my physiology, yet their determination to save me was unwavering. The broadcast displayed archival footage from Earth's perspective, declassified for this event. It showed the general lying on a reinforced stretcher, surrounded by paramedics in protective gear. His teal blood had already stained the ground beneath him, and his breathing appeared labored. Scientists observed from behind glass panels, frantically analyzing samples of his fluids and tissues in an effort to create a temporary stabilizer. I remember hearing their voices, he continued. Their language was sharp, filled with urgency. I could barely comprehend the words, but the tone was unmistakable. They wanted me to survive. The Venthrall audience watched in fascination as the general described the moment he realized the humans' limitations. They injected me with a serum, an experiment meant to mimic my own body's regenerative process. It failed. His mandibles clicked in what seemed to be frustration, but his gaze softened as he added, "Yet they refused to give up." One human in particular stood out, he recalled, a scientist named Dr. Evelyn Carr. She was relentless. Even as the others hesitated, unsure if saving me was possible or even wise, she pushed forward. Her confidence was unsettling, but it was also the reason I am here today. A holographic projection of Earth's hospital room appeared on screen, showing Dr. Carr leaning over the general's body, surrounded by a chaotic array of monitors and alien readings. Her voice could barely be heard over the alarms, giving orders to her team with unwavering authority. "They stabilized me," he said. "But my condition was worsening. Their technology had bought me hours, maybe a day at most. It was then I realized that survival would require more than their efforts alone. They needed help from Venthrall." The general leaned back slightly, his eyes glinting with the memory. "And so, humanity made a decision that would change everything. They reached out to my world." The message they sent to Venthrall was both bold and desperate, the general said, his voice carrying an air of awe. Humanity, a species I had once considered insignificant, had decided to risk contact with a civilization far beyond their comprehension, all to save a stranger. The broadcast displayed a dramatic reenactment of Earth's efforts. A team of engineers and linguists worked tirelessly to adapt their communication systems, piecing together fragments of the general's own language from the limited data available. Scientists debated the risks. What if Venthrall misunderstood their intentions and saw the signal as an act of aggression? Yet, despite the uncertainty, they pressed forward. "The transmission reached Zerith Quor," he continued. "I later learned that the message was chaotic, laced with errors. But its intent was clear. They needed our help to save me. On Venthrall, the response was swift. A specialized medical vessel, the Krenvalis, was dispatched immediately. The general's survival was deemed a matter of planetary honor, though. Some questioned whether humanity's interference could be trusted. The council was divided, he admitted, but in the end they acted. Even they recognized the significance of what was happening. The broadcast shifted to footage of the Krenvalis entering Earth's orbit. The sleek, silver vessel dwarfed the human crafts sent to escort it. On board, Venthrall's most skilled medics prepared for an unprecedented collaboration. "Time was against us," the general said, his tone somber. "My condition had deteriorated rapidly. By the time the Venthrall medics arrived, I was barely conscious. Their scans revealed what the humans could not: My central neural conduit, the core of my being, was failing. In the Earth Medical Facility, the two teams faced each other for the first time. The atmosphere was thick with tension and uncertainty. It was more than a meeting of minds, the general explained. It was a test of trust. Could two species so different in their ways unite to save one life? The general paused, his eyes narrowing as he gazed at the audience. And would it be enough? The first meeting between the humans and Ventral medics was tense, the general said, his mandibles tightening. Both sides approached cautiously, each unsure of the other's methods and intentions. For a moment, I wondered if their differences would doom me. The broadcast displayed a simulation of the scene, humans in sterile white lab coats standing across from Ventral medics clad in shimmering bioarmor, their elongated forms radiating an aura of precision and superiority. The language barrier loomed over them, but the universal urgency of the situation bridged the gap. Dr. Evelyn Carr, the general said, his tone shifting to one of respect, was the first to step forward. She extended her hand, a gesture unfamiliar to Ventral culture. I later learned it was a sign of goodwill among humans. To my people, it was an unexpected act of humility. One of the Ventral medics, identified as Chief Helix, responded with a soft chime from his vocal resonators. Helix was skeptical, the general admitted. He questioned their capabilities, their tools, and even their motives. But Dr. Carr's resolve was unwavering. She didn't see species or politics, only a life to be saved. As the teams began their collaboration, the challenges became apparent. Human technology, though impressive, lacked the precision needed to repair my neural conduit, the general explained. Meanwhile, Ventral methods relied on biotechnological interfaces that could destabilize human equipment. They had to improvise, together. Footage showed the teams working side by side, combining their knowledge in ways neither had thought possible. Ventral medics utilized their advanced understanding of anatomy, while humans provided creative problem-solving and raw adaptability. I was barely aware of what was happening, the general said, his voice softening. But I remember moments of clarity, glimpses of two species arguing, collaborating, pushing boundaries. It was chaos, yet it was beautiful. The broadcast cut to a dramatic reenactment of the moment they discovered a critical breakthrough, an experimental fusion of human nanotechnology and Ventral biogel. It was a gamble, the general admitted, but it was the only chance I had left. The procedure began under immense pressure, the general continued, his voice deep with the memory. Every second felt like an eternity as they worked against time and uncertainty. My neural conduit, my core, was failing faster than expected. The broadcast displayed a dramatic simulation of the operation. The Ventral medics delicately applied their biogel to stabilize the general's damaged conduit, while human nanobots navigated through his alien physiology, creating pathways where his body could no longer function independently. The process was unprecedented, a union of technology and biology from two civilizations that had never interacted before. At one point, I remember hearing Helix's voice, the general said. He doubted it would work. He claimed the human tools lacked the precision needed to integrate with our biosystems. But Dr. Carr refused to stop. Her response was simple. It has to work. There's no other option. The tension in the operating room grew as alarms began to sound. The general's vital signs dropped precipitously, his teal blood leaking through cracks in his exoskeleton. One of the Ventral medics called for a halt, fearing further intervention would do more harm than good. But humanity's persistence proved to be their greatest strength, the general said, his tone shifting to admiration. Dr. Carr and her team refused to accept failure. They adapted their approach in real time, recalibrating their nanobots to respond to ventral biofeedback, a feat even Helix acknowledged as extraordinary. The breakthrough came when a critical fusion point between the biogel and the nanobots began to stabilize his neural conduit. Monitors displayed a faint but steady resurgence in his core energy flow. It was fragile, he admitted, but it was enough to keep me alive. The room erupted in cautious optimism, but the work was far from over. The general's recovery depended on whether his body could sustain the artificial repairs long enough for his natural systems to regenerate. In those moments, he said, I saw something I never expected. Two species, so different, yet so alike. Putting aside every barrier to save a life, it was more than survival. It was a glimpse of what was possible when we worked together. My survival wasn't guaranteed, the general admitted, his antennae lowering slightly. The procedure had stabilized me, but my condition was precarious. Ventral biology is resilient, yet unpredictable under artificial intervention. The broadcast showed an intricate diagram of the general's internal systems, highlighting the neural conduit and the fused ventral biogel and human nanobots. The fusion was fragile, and the smallest misstep could lead to catastrophic failure. The first 24 hours were critical, he explained. Both teams stayed by my side, monitoring every fluctuation in my vitals. The humans provided constant data, analysis, while the ventral medics fine-tuned the biogel's responses to my body. At one point during his recovery, the general's body began to reject the repairs. His exoskeleton emitted faint pulses of energy, an automatic defense mechanism designed to expel foreign substances. It was painful, he said, his voice trembling slightly, and it nearly undid everything they had accomplished. Dr. Carr was the first to react, working with Helix to counteract the reaction. I watched them argue, the general recounted. Their approaches clashed at every turn. Humans relied on improvisation, while ventral medics demanded precision. Yet somehow, they found balance. The breakthrough came when a young human technician suggested a radical idea: integrating ventral energy stabilizers with Earth's electromagnetic pulse regulators. The suggestion was unorthodox, the general admitted, but it worked. My core began to stabilize again, and for the first time, there was hope. The footage cut to the moment his vitals reached a sustainable level. The humans erupted into cheers, their relief palpable. The ventral medics, while more reserved, exchanged glances of approval. It was a turning point, the general said, his voice filled with gratitude. They had not only saved my life, but also proven that collaboration between our species was possible. For a moment, the barriers between us, cultural, technological, and emotional, faded. He paused, his gaze steady on the audience. But the journey wasn't over. There was still one final challenge ahead. The final challenge wasn't just about me, the general said, his voice deep with reflection. It was about what my survival represented for Ventral, for humanity, and for the galaxy. As his vitals stabilized, the humans and Ventral medics began preparing for his transition back to his homeworld. The Ventral Council demanded my immediate return, he explained. They feared prolonged exposure to Earth might compromise me further, or worse, reveal too much about our biology to an untested ally. But there was a problem. The experimental fusion in his neural conduit was still unstable. Moving him too soon risked undoing everything the teams had accomplished. It was a moment of tension, he admitted. The Ventral medics wanted to extract me immediately, while Dr. Carr and her team insisted on more time to ensure the repairs held. The debate reached a boiling point, with both sides arguing over the best course of action. It was then that the general, despite his weakened state, made his voice heard. I told them this wasn't just about me anymore, he said. My survival had already proven that cooperation was possible. If we faltered now, it would send the wrong message to both of our worlds. Reluctantly, the Venthrall medics agreed to delay his transport for 48 more hours. In that time, the combined teams fine-tuned their work, ensuring the fusion was as stable as possible. Those final days were a testament to what we could achieve together, he said. Trust had replaced doubt, and respect had replaced fear. When the Krenvalis finally departed Earth, carrying the general back to Venthrall, it wasn't just a return to his people. It was the beginning of something far greater, he said, his voice steady. For the first time, humanity and Venthrall had glimpsed a future where our differences didn't divide us, but strengthened us. He leaned forward, looking directly into the camera. And for that, I owe humanity more than my life. I owe them my faith. The broadcast ended with silence, the weight of his words lingering long after. The tale of survival against impossible. Odds is more than just a story. It's a reminder of what we can achieve when we set aside fear and embrace understanding. This wasn't just the saving of one life. It was the first step toward a united future across the galaxy. If this story inspired you, leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more incredible accounts that push the boundaries of what we think is possible. And remember, the stars hold endless stories, but only those brave enough to reach for them will leave their mark.